I came home one Friday evening to find a fresh line of bright orange cones across my own driveway, and a handwritten sign duct taped to the barricade that said, "Temporary HOA access restriction." The kicker. The cones were on my land, and the sign was nailed into the tree I planted with my father 20 years ago. At first, I thought it was a prank. Until I saw Karen Cross, clipboard in hand, standing across the street filming me as I tried to pull in. She raised her phone, shook her head, and mouthed, "You don't live by the rules anymore." What she didn't know, was that those rules ran over land she didn't own anymore. Where are you watching from? Have you ever had someone try to control land they didn't even own? I'm Jake, 41, construction surveyor, born and raised in this valley. The first weird thing happened in March. I came back from work to see bright white lines spray painted on the gravel just off my driveway curve. Didn't think much of it. Figured it was the county or a utility crew. But I checked the county work orders the next day. Nothing was scheduled. Then my neighbor, Dan, a retired welder who lives 2 lots down, mentioned Karen, the HOA president, had a mobility access idea for the shared road. A reroute to standardize driveway entries to make it easier for emergency vehicles. Problem was, my driveway was never part of their shared road. It forked off just before HOA territory began, which is exactly why I bought that lot. Clipboard Karen's Community Realignment Plan. The following week, Karen left a printed packet in everyone's mailbox. It was labeled Community Enhancement Initiative, Phase 1. In it, new HOA traffic flow plans, suggested driveway regrades, and a map that, shockingly, redrew the border of the HOA to include my property, plus 2 other houses that were never part of the HOA. She literally tried to annex my land by diagram. Dan came over fuming. "She's trying to rope us in because our driveways make her new bike trail plan too narrow," he said. I laughed it off. That was my first mistake. Construction the first blockade. Mid-April, it escalated. I came back from a weekend out of town, towing a utility trailer with supplies for a shed project. Pulled up the road and, bam, blocked. 2 HOA signs, caution tape, and 4 cones right across my entrance. It wasn't just my driveway anymore. It was a message. The signs read, "Private HOA access only, maintenance zone, no vehicle passage." I called the sheriff. He said since no one was present and the tape wasn't locked or dangerous, he couldn't file trespassing, only suggested I document and remove it. I did. Took pictures, collected everything, then knocked on Karen's door. Her response: "I'm not technically saying you're in the HOA yet, but we're preparing for when you do the right thing and join." That's when I realized this wasn't confusion. This was a deliberate takeover. Receipt HOA dues notice, for land I never joined. By early May, I received a bill. Yes, a printed invoice from the HOA requesting $410 in backdated dues, along with a note. All properties bordering Phase 1 of the community trail are required to contribute to initial improvements. I took it straight to the county assessor's office. The clerk pulled up the property lines and said something that changed everything. "Sir, your road access isn't managed by the county or the HOA. That stretch of gravel? It's a private easement deeded solely to your parcel, it's legally yours. Not just the driveway. The entire road Karen used to host her HOA walks every weekend." Light bulb the moment it snapped. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was angry, I was calculating. Every barbecue they held, every stroller Karen pushed down that road, every landscaper they brought in through that entrance, had been using my land. Illegally. And now, they were trying to bill me for not joining them. I sat on my porch, watching the trail light flicker across the roadbed, and said aloud to no one. "All right then. If they want to block driveways, I'll block something bigger. You're not welcome on this road anymore." The morning after I made up my mind, I didn't waste time. I walked the stretch of gravel that connected my property to the rest of the neighborhood, all 147 feet of it, and marked the property boundary posts myself. It was cold, early, and quiet, except for birds and the distant hum of sprinklers. By 9:12 a.m., Karen showed up. She saw the flag markers, squinted, then marched across the road like it was hers. "Jake, this isn't helpful. You're escalating things," she said, standing just 2 inches over the line. I kept my arms crossed. "You've been trespassing. I'm marking what I own. You don't have a say in this." She laughed. "We're the homeowners association, not renters club. This is about keeping the whole community unified." But the language had shifted. Not, "You're welcome to join." Not, "We can discuss this." It was already war. Receipt the fines begin. 3 days later, I got a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a printed, warning notice, from the HOA. Violation, unauthorized markings on shared community path. Fine, $220. Due date, 7 days. I read it 3 times. The kicker. They called my private road, Community Path 1A, as if renaming it gave them legal authority. I didn't respond. But I documented everything, photos, video, date stamped. That same week, they sent another notice. Violation, unapproved structure, gravel pile attracting wildlife. Fine, $180. That structure was a landscaping pile I'd had delivered for the new shed pad. Covered, secured, on my land. They were building a false record, and I knew why. They wanted to pressure me into folding, either by fines or by public shaming. Video camera on a pole. Next came the camera. Dan texted me one afternoon with a picture. Karen and 2 other board members had installed a motion-activated security camera on a metal pole near the split in the road, aimed directly at my property gate. Not the street. Not the HOA gardens. My house. My driveway. My garage. I walked down that evening and stood under it. Sure enough, the red light blinked. Recording. I called the sheriff again. Technically, he said, if it's on HOA property and aimed at an open area, they can claim it's general surveillance. But my deed showed the pole was on my right-of-way. So I sent a cease and desist letter, certified, along with copies of the deed and a notice to remove the device within 72 hours. They ignored it. In early June, I hired a fencing crew to install a privacy fence along the property line. The workers showed up in 2 trucks, unloaded tools, and started digging post holes. By mid-morning, Karen was there, clipboard in hand, phone recording, shouting over the fence line. "This worksite is unauthorized. Do you have HOA permit approvals? This could trigger a code violation." The youngest guy, maybe 22, looked at me and whispered. "Is this a joke? Who even is she?" 10 minutes later, a county inspector arrived, called by Karen. The inspector walked the site, looked at my documents, and shook his head. "Everything's in order. This is private land. No HOA permit needed here." Karen said nothing, just stood silent, arms crossed, filming the whole thing. But it worked. The next day, the contractor emailed me. "We're backing off the job. We've had clients blacklisted by HOAs before. Can't risk the headache." They won, for now. Firecracker, the community safety petition. The final straw came when Karen distributed a community safety petition. On the surface, it looked harmless, a request to formalize access zones and improve lighting. But Clause 3 caught my eye. All bordering properties must remain accessible to HOA enforcement for shared path maintenance. It was a forced easement request, disguised as neighborly improvement. I called Dan. He'd already read it and refused to sign. But several newer residents had no idea what they were agreeing to. Some even thought it was about planting flowers. Karen had gone from pushing cones to engineering a legal land grab. And most people had no idea. Balance scale the quiet decision. I spent that Sunday walking the full stretch of the road again. I counted every foot of gravel. Noted every rut, every overgrowth spot, every HOA footprint. Then I went back inside and pulled out the original purchase packet from my closing. In it was a clause I hadn't paid attention to before. Private easement access granted solely to Lot 17 for ingress/egress, with discretionary rights over maintenance, traffic, and commercial use. Lot 17, that's me. I didn't just own the road. I owned the rights to control who used it, and how. Card index dividers laying the first brick. That night, I drafted a letter. No threats. No emotion. Just the facts. Effective July 1st, access to the private road marked as Parcel 17 easement will be temporarily suspended pending review of recent unauthorized use, trespassing, and non-permitted surveillance activities. Alternative access routes exist via Maple Creek Lane and West Hill Drive, both within HOA jurisdiction. Further use of Parcel 17 without permission will be considered trespassing under state law. I printed 24 copies. Certified 3, one for the HOA, one for the county, one for my records. I signed it. Dated it. And I placed Karen's copy right into her mailbox the next morning, just before sunrise. No words. No arguments. But something told me, she'd read it before breakfast. The mailbox that shifted everything. By noon that day, Karen had already responded. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She posted a statement in the neighborhood Facebook group, tagging every board member and writing. Certain individuals have decided to act unilaterally regarding public access to our community roadways. While their claims are exaggerated and inaccurate, we are consulting legal counsel to defend our shared rights. She ended it with, "This is what happens when isolationists refuse to cooperate." The comment section exploded, half the people didn't even know which road she meant. But a few neighbors, Dan included, began replying with their own photos of cones, cameras, and Karen. The silence I'd planned. It was working louder than shouting ever could. That evening, I emptied the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, the one with every title, blueprint, inspection record, and plat map from the year I bought the land. I laid them out across the floor and highlighted every line that mentioned Parcel 17 and easement access rights. Then I called in someone I trusted, a quiet man named Russell, who'd worked as a zoning enforcement officer for the county before retiring. He walked the land with me, reviewed the documents, and confirmed. This is one of those legacy easements, full control sits with the grantee. You can regulate traffic, make changes, even close it temporarily, as long as it doesn't restrict emergency access. I nodded. What if it's being misused? He smiled. Then it's your responsibility to manage it. Brain no fire. No drama. Just precision. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoring the line they'd crossed, and making sure they never forgot where it actually stood. So I took 3 steps. Step 1, file the land use intentions. I submitted a written notice to the county clerk's office, titled, Change of Use, Private Easement Use Adjustment for Parcel 17. In it, I declared, temporary traffic restriction for non-residents. Controlled access signage. Private use designation until resolution of repeated HOA interference. It wasn't a lawsuit. But it was official. And public, receipt step 2, certified notice to HOA. The next day, I sent a formal notice to the HOA board through certified mail. It read, per rights granted under Recorded Deed 17 EA 34B, and in light of unauthorized activity, Parcel 17 easement access is now under restricted control. All non-owner access must be pre-approved in writing. I attached photos of the cones, the camera, The fake petition. The invoices they mailed me. I gave them 7 days to respond. Not to debate, to comply. Step 3, Public Record Filing. Just before the weekend, I took my final step. I filed a deed notice of access enforcement with the county recorder's office. That made it public record that the HOA's so-called community path was under private enforcement, and that legal action would follow for any further intrusion. Within 72 hours, it appeared online in the public land access system. Anyone searching HOA Road or Parcel 17 would now see my name, my rights, and my terms. Karen couldn't hide behind mystery anymore. Person standing when the neighbors started knocking. Funny thing happens when you move in silence. People notice you more than when you shout. By Monday morning, 2 neighbors, folks I'd barely spoken to before, showed up at my front gate, polite and quiet. One, a woman named Cheryl, said, "We had no idea this wasn't HOA land." She made it sound like the whole neighborhood signed off on that access path. I showed her the plat map. Let her see the filing date. She looked embarrassed, then nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I signed that petition. If I'd known." Dan came by later that night. He brought a bottle of sweet tea and sat on my porch. "You didn't raise your voice once, and you still managed to shake the ground." I shrugged. "They made it personal. I just made it legal." Karen's legal threat backfires. On Wednesday, a letter arrived in a white envelope with a firm's watermark. It was from the HOA's lawyer, or so they claimed. Inside. "We request you immediately reverse your restriction of access to the community path known as Maple Spur. Continued obstruction may result in legal consequences." They called it Maple Spur. I called it Parcel 17. I wrote back. There is no recognized designation under county records for a Maple Spur. The area in question is designated as Parcel 17 easement. I welcome your legal team to review Deed 17 EA 34B before continuing further claims. Attached? A scanned image of the original recorded map with Karen's walking trail circled, inside my boundary lines. Never heard from that lawyer again. Brick the barrier that said it all. I didn't build a wall. I built a message. Using split timber and natural stone, I had a removable privacy gate installed across the entry point where Karen had placed those first cones. It wasn't locked. It wasn't aggressive. It just made one thing crystal clear. Private access, Parcel 17 owners only, HOA use prohibited without written consent. Dan helped me install it. We didn't speak much, just worked until sunset. By dusk, the last post was sunk, the sign was mounted, and the gravel had been regraved into a clean line no HOA foot would casually step over. Person in lotus position, the calm before the fallout. That night, I sat with a fresh coffee in my hand, porch light off, listening to the crickets and the breeze cutting through the trees. I'd taken no shortcuts. No drama. Every action was documented, filed, and aligned with the same system they tried to twist. It wasn't about stopping Karen anymore. It was about exposing the lie she built her power on. And now, that lie was cornered. Chapter 4 wouldn't be about revenge. It would be about watching her empire crumble, one HOA regulation at a time. The sign they couldn't ignore. 3 days after the gate went up, Karen held an emergency HOA meeting at the community park. Only this time, she wasn't speaking in confident circles. I didn't attend, but Dan did. He filmed it from his phone and sent me a short clip. Karen stood in front of 24 residents, arms folded, visibly agitated. Behind her on the grass table were printed photos of the new gate, the deed filing, and, most hilariously, my sign, enlarged and mounted on a poster board like Exhibit A at a trial. She pointed at it and said, "This is why we must act now. This kind of rogue behavior weakens the foundation of our association." But someone from the crowd, Cheryl, raised her hand and said, "You told us that path belonged to the HOA. Now we find out it doesn't. Who else are you misleading?" The room fell quiet. Karen froze. Then pivoted. But the damage was done. Receipt when the county called. Karen. 1 week later, I got a voicemail from Brad, a clerk at the zoning office I'd spoken to before. "Hey Jake, just a heads up, someone from the HOA filed a complaint about improper obstruction of community access. We pulled the parcel. Saw your notice, deed, all clean. You're good. We'll be contacting the complainant." That complainant? Karen. Turns out, her last-ditch effort was to paint me as the problem. But by now, I had a certified easement filing, 3 notarized notices of unauthorized use, and evidence of her posting fake petitions. County's response: they warned her for harassment and misuse of community complaint resources. Officially, chart decreasing the board begins to crumble. Within 2 weeks, 3 HOA board members resigned. One posted in the Facebook group, "We were misled about land rights and used as cover for personal grievances. I joined to help the neighborhood, not enable lawsuits." Another wrote, "The parcel conflict should have been verified before any policy changes. I refuse to be complicit in continued overreach." Karen tried damage control, hosting a community picnic to smooth things over. Only 4 people showed up. I didn't attend. But I saw her walking back that afternoon, alone, folding chairs under her arm. No phone out. No clipboard. Just her, with no one to control. The final notice that ended it. On the 45th day after my access restriction letter, I mailed a final certified envelope to the HOA's legal address. Inside was a copy of my easement usage enforcement summary, along with a legal addendum. Future unauthorized access by HOA leadership or agents will result in formal civil action, including claim of property harassment, unlawful surveillance, and interference with private contractors. I attached a detailed timeline of every HOA action, incident, and warning. No drama. Just signatures, dates, and codes. Karen never responded. She didn't even sign for the letter. But a week later, the camera pole was gone. The petition? Quietly shredded. The fines? Never mentioned again. And the cones? Still stacked by the sidewalk, untouched. Prohibited the trail that went nowhere. That same month, the HOA formally canceled the Community Enhancement Initiative, Phase 1. They blamed budget constraints and contractor delays. But everyone knew the truth. There was no trail left to build. The stretch of land they wanted to claim was now sealed behind a gate they couldn't pass, protected by deed, backed by the county, and enforced by someone who no longer stayed quiet. One neighbor even joked, "That's the only trail in town that ends with a 'keep out' sign and a victory." Peace returns, but I won't forget. The road is quiet now. No more traffic, no cameras blinking at night. No HOA emails stuffed in my box. Just the sound of tires on gravel when I return home, mine. Dan still drops by sometimes. He likes to stand at the gate, sip his tea, and say, "Best would we ever sunk into the ground." I never wanted a fight. I never wanted control. But when they blocked my driveway, they didn't just mess with a road. They woke up a landowner who knew where the lines were, and made sure everyone else learned to respect them. House with Garden. Has an HOA ever tried to cross a line with you, on land you legally owned? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more real stories like this, hit that subscribe button.